Hello, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 2 of EKU Voices, a conversation with Eastern Kentucky University's alumni and friends, brought to you by the Office of Development and Alumni Relations in collaboration with the Department of Communication. I'm Carrie Lewis, Director of Special Projects and Development.
And I'm Brady McBride, a senior here at EKU.
And we are bringing you this podcast from the Department of Communication podcast studio on the campus beautiful here in Richmond, Kentucky. So, Brady, how you doing today?
I'm a little wet. I mean, it's rainy out there.
It's been raining for like 5 days now.
It is.
And I think it's finally stopped.
I hope so.
Because it is, it's been not fun.
No.
And it's been humid, too. That's the thing.
Yeah, even when it's not raining, it's
it's just that humidity.
Muggy, yeah.
And technically, it is fall.
Technically, yeah.
Yes, it is. So, it can go ahead and be fall just whenever it wants to.
Exactly.
Yeah. But, you know what? That did not stop us, however, from having a pre-production meeting at Purdy's.
Exactly.
Of course, on Monday, as we do when we're prepping for, our next episode. And I had black coffee, but I changed it up. I had an everything bagel with cream cheese because I was hungry. And normally I don't eat breakfast, but I was like, you know what? I want a bagel.
And they're good. They're really good with the cream cheese.
Absolutely. And I think you went with straight black coffee,
I went with black coffee. I did add a little dab of sugar in there to sweeten it up a little bit. Can't really take it black. It's just too bitter for me. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm black or get out.
I feel you.
I mean, again, I'll have the occasional caramel macchiato, whatever.
Those are good.
But that's an afternoon thing for me. Just for the sugar. I'm not a morning sugar person.
I feel you.
Just straight up in the morning. But, speaking of coffee, we do have a new exciting thing on campus. Well, two new exciting things, actually. There's a lot of construction going on.
There is.
So the new Starbucks just opened. Have you been there yet?
I have not been there yet. I haven't checked it out, but I'm going to. I have to check it out.
See, I went in there on last Friday, and actually did get a caramel macchiato in the morning because it was a Friday. So I just made a liar out of myself, right? But anyway, it's nice because the it's in the bottom of PAL, which is the old student center cafeteria area, and it's kind of interesting because it's a little bit of a snapshot of what I think they're going to do to the rest of the building. But they also have another new thing in there.
Steak and Shake.
Yes, Steak and Shake is now available on EKU's campus, and that's very exciting.
It's going to be great.
Get all your hamburgers and fries and shakes and gain about 30 pounds.
Get that freshman 15 real quick.
That's exactly right. But no, that's okay. But it's exciting for EKU because, we are offering students more choices.
Very true.
Which is always good. But I'm telling you, I don't care. For my money, you cannot beat Case, especially on Wednesdays, because faculty and staff get a discount. So, I go in there and all you can eat for it's like $7.95, I think, or something like that. Too. And it's really delicious food. But it's gonna be really neat to see what the rest of PAL ends up looking like when they get it fully renovated.
I agree.
Which I'm not sure what the timeline is on that. Maybe our guests can tell us, but I think it's gonna be really cool.
Yeah.
Something new for the students, which is what you always want. So speaking of students, I think we probably need to get to our guest.
Probably should.
Yeah, because she's really important and integral in our student body on campus. But first, I have to thank Tom Thurman again for coming on.
That was a great guest. Great show.
Unbelievable conversation. He has great stories. He probably could have told us stories for 2 hours, I bet, easily. But
we easily could have had a 3-hour podcast with him.
Yes, and I would have listened. Mm-hmm. Yes, but thanks again to him for coming on. But so our guest this week is not only an EKU alum, but also serves an important administrative role here on campus. A native of Richmond, Kentucky, she earned a Bachelor of Science in Child Development and a master's degree in College Student Counseling and Personnel Services from EKU. She's held many positions on campus, including Senior Secretary to the Vice President of Student Affairs, Assistant Director, I can't read my own copy. I'm sorry about that. Assistant Director, of Student Judicial Affairs and Disability Services, Director of Residential Development, and Associate Dean of Students. She became EKU's Director of Housing in 1998, and in 2013, as Director of Housing, she helped oversee the construction of EKU's first residence hall on campus in over 40 years, and the first LEED Gold Dorm on a state university campus in Kentucky. In 2015, she was named EKU's Interim Dean of Students, and shortly after, she was made officially the Dean of Students. In addition to her duties as Dean of Students, she is also an instructor for the first-year course, and in 2014, she was nominated as an Outstanding Instructor. Welcome, Dean of Students, Kenna Middleton.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. It's great for you to be here.
Yeah, now I have a real issue to try to come up to Tom Thurmond because he has got some tremendous stories over the years. So I'm going to have to work hard to try to meet his standard.
He does, and he's got, FBI stories and that kind of thing. But you know what? You've got stories from the dorms. You have tales from the dorms. I mean, I'm sorry, but Brady, you may agree with this. I don't know. But tales from the college dorms, I think, are scarier than some FBI stories.
I mean, some of those rooms, it might look like a bomb went off in.
We've seen some of those.
Yeah, right. Exactly. No, but we're very, very, very happy to have you.
Thanks so much.
Us.
It's great to be here. I love sharing my EKU story and the EKU story that continues.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just jump right into that because you are a native of Richmond, Kentucky.
I am born and bred. I actually lived most of my life on this campus because I was at Model from the time I was in kindergarten through 12th grade. Back then, Model actually was enrolled through the university building where the library is adjoined now. And when you had a child that was 3 months old, you could take your child and enroll them in Model. So my mom trekked up there, got me enrolled in Model, and then I started there in kindergarten, which same building that Model's in now. Okay. But I really had planned to not attend EKU. My best friend in high school, a girl by the name of Diane Kaiser that was from Richmond, she and I were actually on spring break in the ocean together. And she had a boyfriend in Richmond that was going to be staying in Richmond, and I had a boyfriend in Richmond. So we were like, well, because, it's all important to go where your boyfriends are, not your education. So in the middle of the ocean, we decided that we should come to Eastern instead of going where we had originally planned. The thing that's interesting, back when I was in school, I was here 77 to 81, dorms on campus were packed across the country. And so it was pretty unusual to get into a room with two people because most everything was tripled, and Eastern was no different. But we got back from vacation, we applied to Eastern, got accepted, and filled out paperwork and made our way up here the following fall. And so that's where it kind of all started, I guess.
All right. That's really interesting, is the fact that, you were in the ocean with your friend and you weren't going to go here. Where were you going to go? Did you have aspirations to go somewhere else?
Well, I think as being a Kentucky native, we sort of were of that mindset that you really had made it if you went to UK. And so we had actually been accepted to UK and had a room assignment in Blanding Tower, which has now been torn down and they've got all brand new over there. But back then, again, to have gotten a room there, it was like, whoo, we are doing something right to be there. But made the decision to come back here. Didn't stay with those boyfriends for very long, so that reason for coming changed pretty quickly, but never once did we look back and think it was not the right decision. So we're both EK alums now and thrilled to be so.
During your undergrad, what was campus like compared to now?
Oh, wow. Well, we didn't wear beanies, even though if you get an old milestone, you'll see some beanies out there. It was very different. Everything as far as living on campus, all the dorms were either male or female. And kind of a little quick fact, back then in the girls' dorms, everything, you had a dorm mother. And so dorm mothers were typically little old ladies that had never been married that would come up here and kind of mother the girls that lived there. But in all the male halls, men were always married and would always have a family. So in all the female halls, there were 1-bedroom apartments for the dorm mothers. In all the male halls, there were 2-bedroom apartments because men were married and had kids. And so as you saw how those halls were built, even as we started renovating those over the years, it was like, oh, this was built a female hall. This was built a male hall. But it was different, we were still, there were still similar things. There's some things that are really, really sad to me that I'd like to see reinvigorated. I remember being turned away from an EKU basketball game because the arena was full. Like all the way to the top, nobody could get in. And so, at certain points, I feel like maybe we had a little bit more school spirit than we do now, but I think we've got some really good initiatives that are out there that hopefully are trying to rebuild that student spirit and pride in being an EKU colonel. The halls, one of my favorite things is when I was living on campus, they actually started male-female visitation, so men could come in one day a week from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock, and then a different day of the week, women could go to the guys' halls and check in. We had to have the door open and all kinds of different things. But, I also remember the days of registration when you would pick all your classes and then you would go to these stations and there would be punch cards. And so you would go up and you'd say, hey, I need English 101, section 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so they would go and then go, oh, I'm sorry, we're out of section 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it messes up your whole schedule. You have to get out of line and you go. And I sit and look now that at midnight you can get online and start picking your classes. And it's like, gosh, how far we've come from that. And when people talk about gosh, it's so hard and it takes so much time. I'm like, when you would stand in line for 3 hours to be told your punch card was gone, that's when you really invested time. Student services is the other thing. Like having the Whitlock building where everything predominantly is all together. Like I remember going to one building to pay my bill, go to another building to admission. So having all that together, gosh, how great it is for students to kind of have a one-stop shop.
Brady, I got to ask you, would you stand in line for 3 hours to register for a class?
No way. I mean, I'm so used to just getting online and snagging my classes. Like, it probably takes me like 15 minutes to do it now.
Could you even imagine standing in line for that long to get a class?
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
It happened, though.
Oh,
yeah,
it did.
It absolutely.
Was very much how it was.
Yeah. And like you said, you could stand there for 3 hours and then say, oh, it's full. Yeah.
And then it changes your whole schedule because there's no other class that fits in that time slot. So it's much more user-friendly now.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I got to ask you, when you were on campus, was Bob Martin still president?
He was.
Do you have any good Dr. Martin stories?
Well, and actually, I'm trying to think if he was still president. My whole family has kind of an Eastern history. My father-in-law was Chad Middleton, who was director of facilities here on campus for a number of years. And so Dr. Martin had hired my father-in-law to be director here. And he has a million Bob Martin stories about he would, Dr. Martin, if he said it, he was this big booming man that there were not questions asked. But I think what I remember most, and I was actually trying to think, I graduated under Dr. Powell when he was here. But what I remember living in Richmond with Dr. Martin here is that the city of Richmond as we knew it changed. The whole landscape changed because you had kind of the center part of campus that all of a sudden buildings popped up everywhere. And, I've talked at times with Dr. Benson, and I've heard people kind of equate the two because Eastern went through a building boom under Dr. Martin, which is a lot of the reason why we had some of the infrastructure problem that we had, because most of those buildings were built in the 60s and going into the 70s. And that's the same thing that you're seeing now. You're seeing a brand new rec center. You're seeing, facilities that have been there, the science building that's brand new and state of the art. And so we're beginning to see some of those same things on campus now that we probably saw in the Bob Martin era. But that's just, I remember he was sort of larger than life. And if he was in a room, he commanded that room. So.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. That most people who have been on here who've interacted with him have said the same thing. That when he talked, you definitely listened. Absolutely.
When you graduated EKU, you graduated with a bachelor's degree in child development and family studies. How did you go from that to EKU administration?
Very carefully. I actually took kind of a secondary route. My degree in child development, my initial thing that I really wanted to do is I wanted to work in a preschool type educational environment that would look at holistic development of kids in the 3-4 going into kindergarten age range. Several people that work here now, I actually had as students when I did practicum at the Child Development Center here on campus. And so when I left Eastern, I actually moved to Lexington, and I got a job at a educational co-op that was part of a church over in Lexington, but it was not a very good paying job. So I got a secondary job at McAlpin's in Lexington, which is actually where Dillard's is, I guess,
it's
right
where
now.
Dillard's was. I think it's the church now. It's,
Okay,
it's
yes,
Southland,
that's Southland Church.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. So I ended up working over there part-time, and I went into a full-time position there that I ended up having to leave the position with the educational co-op that I did. And so I don't know if I was in the right place at the wrong time or the wrong place at the right time, but I was doing some soul searching. I wanted to come back to Richmond from Lexington. I had gone through some things personally that I felt like I needed to get a little more normalcy to my life, which I laugh about now because a dean of students' life is far from normal. But that's when I took the job in the vice president for student affairs office. And I thought, gosh, what a great thing this is. I love working with students. So I decided to go on and get a master's. And so that's kind of how I came this way. It doesn't really have anything to do with it. I guess sometimes people might say that college students are like 3-year-olds in grown-up bodies, but sometimes that's not the case. So I'm just... I'm actually a product of, I've heard many times that it is critical to have a degree. And I think that probably, I'm the essence of that, because I would not have been hired in the management position that I eventually took with the McAlpin Company had I not had the degree. And then, coming back over here, and the vice president's office gave me kind of a bird's eye view of what student affairs was, and so I was able to kind of decide where I'd like to hone that in. So
then in 1998, you were named director of housing.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
So kind of, give us a little snapshot of what the director of housing entails. Because obviously when people hear that, you're over the dorms, you're dealing with the dorms and that kind of thing. And again, you didn't have any newer dorms on campus at that time. They were all, the old dorms. And, I went to UK. I'll just say it. I did. It's true. I did. I'm sorry. But, I remember coming up in the early 90s when I got my undergrad. And, we were in a room probably about as big as the room we're in now, with 2 beds and prison grade mattresses, and you got what you got and you didn't get upset. I mean, so kind of talk about, coming in as a director of housing, going from, assistant to the vice president, coming up through the ranks, working with students, but now you're working with students on a whole different level.
Well, the first thing I've got to do, because I believe that mentors and people have such an important part of our life. And there have been so many people at EKU that have played a part in who I am today. And the very first one, and she is an alumni that goes way, way back, is a lady by the name of Jeanette Crockett. And until the day that I am old and retired and in a rocking chair somewhere, and even after that, I will say that so much of who I am today I owe to Dean Jeanette Crockett. Back then, when I first started, there were Dean of Men, Dean of Women, and everything was kind of segregated that way. And so there was a Dean of Men, Dean Allen, and he would handle housing and discipline and things like that for men on campus. And Dean Crockett would do Dean of Women, so she'd handle the housing assignments and women's issues, things like that. So eventually what happened is we started thinking, Title IX and gender equity. So they did away with Dean of Men and Dean of Women, and so they all came into positions that were over areas, and Dean Crockett ended up being in the area of housing. And so even when I was with Dr. Myers, who was the vice president that I came in working under, Dean Crockett I knew as a student at EKU. And she was actually an alumni member of the sorority that I ended up joining. So I had always had sort of an appreciation for her. And so I kept looking at that. She was someone that you kind of emulate or whatever. And so she kind of helped make me who I was. And so as I look at, well, gosh, I'm even going away from what our questions are.
That's
I'm
okay.
like, oh
That's
my
okay.
gosh, I don't need to just like tell these accolade stories.
No, that's
but,
okay.
that's
That's
fine.
what we like.
Yeah.
But it's, it's so important as to who you become and what you're doing, the people that play that role. And gosh, I could give a list of 50,000 different people that have been that. But so much she showed me what a consummate professional was, what a person who loved students. And just kind of her guidance and her mentorship has kind of put me on a road of where I've wanted to be, which is probably not even the answer to the question, but I'll always give her those accolades.
That's okay. We just roll with it.
Yeah.
We roll with it.
As director of housing, are there any PG stories you may have from your time over the dorms?
Oh, gosh, there's all kinds. Housing is really interesting. And if you look at the history of higher ed, back many, many years ago, colleges were seen in loco parentis, which was basically in place of parents. So if you were in housing, you were, and that's why they called them dorm moms, because you were expected to be the mother over people. But then there was this swing of you're young adults and you can make your own decisions. So we're dropping the in loco parentis, and now you're off on your own and making these great decisions. I've got stories about visitation where people have gone through windows, up stairwells, through bathroom chases and all kinds of things to get to go see a boyfriend. Some of my favorite stories are roommate conflicts. Because everything is great when you come in. And I remember for a number of years in housing, we would do roommate agreements. So on the first night that you're there together, you would sit down and you'd go, okay, here are the rules. Let's talk about food. If I buy food and everybody's like, oh, we'll just share everything and we love each other and you can wear my clothes and I'll wear your clothes and you eat my food and I'll eat your food and whatever. And so that works until you go in one night dead tired and so hungry you can't stand it, and you open up your drawer where you keep your food and there's nothing there. So I've mitigated lots of those and worked with roommates. One of my favorite things is a girl came and she goes, I've just got to leave my room, because she had gotten to where she would hide food. So she would get in her underwear drawer and take out like packaged cookies, wrap them in her underwear and put them in her drawer in hopes that the roommate wouldn't find them. Wow. P.S. The roommate found them, and then it went downhill from there. So, You made comments about the dorm room being a lot like an Army barracks or whatever, and that has changed so much because it used to be if it's good enough for the military, then it's good enough for the students that are here. But gosh, we're competitive, and so when we've got some really great leadership, and we've been blessed, and I'm not part of housing anymore, but we've been blessed with some really great leadership through the president and the board and Dr. Palka in student success and Billy Martin to be able to not only build what we called New Hall, that is now South, that's the LEED certified hall, but we've got North, the new Martin, and right before I left housing, we were able to obtain the Grand Campus apartments as well. So, what we've also got to do, we can't have that mentality if it's good enough for the Army, it's good enough for us. Yeah. We got to be competitive, and we've got to look at what the UK's and Moorheads and different schools across the country, and I think very much we're heading in that direction.
No, I totally agree, and it is important. It is a really important factor. It's an important factor in retention, which is kind of something I want to backtrack to a little bit. As your time as Director of Housing, you implemented MapWorks program. Is that correct?
Right. MapWorks was a program that was utilized, and actually we're currently not using MapWorks, but the Student Success Collaborative is something that is sort of a substitute for that. But I felt like when I was in housing, that part of what I had to look at is retention was sort of the issue that schools were beginning to look at. And I thought, as a member of the university, what do I do in housing to help with retention? And so we began this MapWorks program, which was a pretty intrusive online questionnaire that would ask everything from, are you making friends? How many times have you missed classes so far? Why have you missed? Do you have money to go out with your friends? Do you have money to buy food? Do you have money to pay for your books? So it didn't just look at, do you have enough money to get by? It would look specifically at different areas. Do you have a job? Do you know where to get a job? And so what we could do, and we found that students that did this online survey, when you're behind that onlineness, you will be truthful in ways that if you sat down, I'm not sure you'd say somebody, I'm not sure I've got money to have food to eat this weekend. And so what we were able to do is pretty intrusively deal with students on what they had reported. When we did it, we went all in, whole hog, as it might be said in Kentucky. And we would give prizes. The first 10 people that would fill out the survey would get $10 Starbucks cards or whatever, and we would do drawings periodically for a lot of different things, because when you're on the student affairs and the student success side of things, part of what we look at is student engagement and the impact that has on the retention of students here. And so the more that you can know, are you not engaged because you have no friends? Are you not engaged because you don't have money to go out or whatever? And we would try to get students connected with the right people that might be able to help them through those things.
As like a first-year student, what are some things that a dean of students does to make them feel at home when they first get on campus?
Well, I cheer them on as they go through Turner Gate, and I scream, woo, really loud. No, I try to be at most of the events that are part of Welcome Week. It's been really interesting to me as dean of students, because what I enjoy most about my job is students. And a lot of people are like, oh, I have to go meet with the dean of students, and they begin quaking in their shoes. And I'm like, I'd prefer that it not be that way. And so I try to go and be where students are and say, hey, I'm Kenna. I'm over in the dean of students office. We're in Whitlock on the 5th floor. If I can ever help you out, please come and let me know. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes it doesn't. Again, student success, and particularly the Division of Student Affairs, is a great team that reaches out to those freshmen. And so as they are coming, we're all there, and we all promote each other. So, go to Campus Rec. Gosh, you're looking for something to do. I see you've got a Campus Rec shirt on over there. So, what a great facility that we've got. And we have a big party over there with bubbles the first night. People love foam pits. I'm like, ew, it's gross. I don't love it. But students love it. So, I try to be there, I guess, in the beginning and then, just try to put myself out there and like I talk to anybody walking around campus. You got earbuds in your ear. Everybody goes, take those out. I'd say, hi. So, if people will refer to me as the odd lady that speaks to everybody on campus.
So then are you still teaching the first year course?
I'm not this semester.
Okay, that's different from this MapWorks thing.
Yes, it is.
Okay,
yes.
And everybody on campus, all first-year students have to take the first-year course.
Yes,
correct?
they do.
Because, Brady, you took it, right?
I took a first-year course, yeah.
And so kind of what did that – why don't you talk about a little bit about what that entailed?
The first-year course really taught us how to manage our money, study habits. Basically, it showed us the real difference between, like, what high school was like and what you're expected to do in college and more responsibility that you're going to take on. Basically, that's what it did for us. And it was just a real heads up for most of the students I know in my class, for me especially. And I felt like it was very beneficial.
Well, the financial thing, because when we were talking about this, on Monday in our pre-production thing, and he said that they have a financial component, I was like, that's brilliant.
Yep.
I mean, that's absolutely brilliant.
Well, so many students, if you are lucky enough to get loans, scholarships, Pell Grants, things like that, and you end up having residual money left over, which many students do because they look at cost of attendance. And your aid is awarded many times based on that. And so I would find that I've met with students that would get a refund back on their Kernel card or however money is refunded. And so they look and they go, oh my gosh, I've got $1,200. I've got $1,200. And so they're like, I didn't know I was going to have $1,200. And I will always, for the remainder of my time, remember a student that came because he didn't have money to buy soap to do laundry with, and he was struggling to find food to eat. And this was back before the Colonel's Cupboard and a lot of the really good services that we offer now. And I said, I looked and I talked with financial aid, and I said, you got $1,200 back. And he goes, what do you mean? And I said, well, like 2 weeks ago, you got this money back. And he goes, was that supposed to be spent like through the rest of the semester? And I was like, yeah, you take that $1,200, whatever the amount was, and try to figure out how you budget your way through. He had taken 8 guys from his floor. They had gone to Cincinnati, gone to a concert, gone to a ball game, and blown $1,200 in the course of an overnight adventure. And he comes back, and there's no way to get that money back. There's no way to get the additional. And so I do think it's important because, a lot of students get paid, if they're working, they get paid once a month or every 2 weeks. And so it's like, okay, I've got money now, so I'll go, I'll shop. It used to be you had credit card companies in throngs that would recruit to students. And so you not only had students that would leave Eastern or school with college debt, but they would leave with debt that was credit card debt that probably was not necessary, but it was sold to them so that it was so attractive that it's hard to turn down. So I think that money management, it's also Green Dot does presentations on bystander intervention. So there's all kinds of good things. There's, an alcohol component so that you do learn about responsible alcohol use and the impacts that can have. So I think life skills is really a great thing that comes out of that class. There are 2 kinds. You either have major, and I don't know, Brady, if you were already declared, but if you're a declared major, you go to your major. So it would be JSO through the College of Justice and Safety, HSO through Health Sciences, EDO through English, or you have GSD, which is through for undeclared students.
And see, I like that because then it's more tailored to you, so it's just not a generic thing.
Right.
If you have a declared major, right? So
Right.
you're maybe more apt to pay attention a little bit more. You
Right.
think? Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about these new dorms on campus because,
right.
you did oversee the first one in 40 years
Yeah.
in 2013. I'm sure that was an interesting experience, but the fact that it is a green dorm and, the first LEED gold certified dorm, in the state of Kentucky, why was that so important to make the first new dorm on campus in 40 years so environmentally friendly?
I believe that Eastern is a trendsetter. I love the school. I love it here. I loved it when I was a student. I've loved it since the day that I came back to work on campus, and that's been almost 30 years ago. It'll be 29 years on January the 2nd if anyone wants to celebrate my anniversary with me. But I really believe that we can set standards for others to follow. And we had that opportunity as we were building. Where South Hall, which was termed New Hall, I love that when we did the LEED certification, they said the ceremony, one of the people from the state of Kentucky said, "What will you do if you build a hall next to this?" I said, "Well, I guess this will be new and that one will be newer." So, but it's been changed, so it's north and south down there. But it was built where Brockton Family Housing used to be. And so all of that was torn down. And what we learned as we were in the demolition phase is that lots of the materials that were there could be utilized. They could be repurposed. And so we got lots of points through some repurposing of materials. I'll give kudos. We worked with Ross Tarrant Architects, and they are very green, environmentally friendly. They actually built with Aramark case dining. And so it was like, what more would it take? What more would it take? And so everything that we did, we would look at what LEED points were. And we knew when you build new construction, you have certain LEED certifications that you get to. Gold is not one of those. But everything that we would do added a point. Not everything, but many of the things. And so at a certain point, it got to be, we can be LEED certified. We can be gold. And there's no other hall in Kentucky that is gold at this point. So what does it take? And we talked to students, and they were like, "That's cool. We want to be a part of that." And so, a student spoke at the LEED ceremony about the pride that she took in living in a hall. And I was like, this was not another, nobody, it's not like we're trying to be like this school or that school. I was like, people are now going to look and go, we need to be like Eastern. We need to shoot for what they've got. So
Now that dorm was built in 2013. Since then, we've had 2 or 3 new dorms after that one?
2 additional.
Are
right.
both of those?
I am not sure. They have LEED certification, but I don't believe that they're LEED Gold. And, of course, they were under a different funding and construction model because they are a public-private partnership. So that hall was the last hall, I guess, that was built or maybe built that's outside of. So it was straight state construction.
And you did find that environmental impact was important to students.
Yes. I think our students are very community driven in lots of different ways. I think you see that in some of the community service, but this is a service to your community. And when you look at now, sometimes I look at garbage cans with trash around them and think, somebody wasn't very environmentally friendly. But I think by and large, students are very socially aware. And certainly environmental issues are part of that social awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So as Dean of Students, let's kind of just skip ahead because now you're Dean of Students, right? And we talked you touched a little bit on this earlier, but people hear Dean of Students and they think, oh, do you just put people on double secret probation, right? Dean Warmer over here. That's all you're going to get from the Dean of Students. What exactly does the Dean of Students encompass?
Well, currently at EKU, the Dean of Students oversees the offices of Student Health Services, Student Counseling Services, Student Conduct and Community Standards, where the double dog probation comes in, or double secret probation, and then the Student Accessibility Office. So those are some great offices. I work with some of the most tremendous people in the world in those offices. They're consummate professionals that look to how they best serve students. Eastern I have been blessed that Eastern has allowed me to have a very hands-on, student-focused Dean of Studentship career, for lack of a better way to put it. So lots of the time that I spend is with students. Sometimes it's pleasant conversations. Sometimes it's not so pleasant conversations, and we work on ways to redirect. Eastern does have, and I chair as Dean of Students, what is called our Student Assistance and Intervention Team. That gives me a lot of that hands-on student conduct. And so it sort of is a bi-fold team. If you remember back to the unfortunate incidents that occurred at Virginia Tech and Northern Illinois with the shootings that occurred there, most campuses began what were termed behavioral intervention teams. And so the Student Assistance and Intervention Team, we certainly, our team has got police, we've got people from the counseling center, and kind of across the board offices from the university so that we can weigh in, and we do that. But I think probably the most rewarding part of that job is what would be considered by most a care team. And so, we are working with a student, and I'll give an example. There's a student that is currently here, and she has had a recurrence of a cancer. That is a pretty difficult thing for an 18-year-old to be dealing with, who is ready to begin her college career and kind of set off soaring, and has been through chemo and was in remission, and then right before school started found that she was back full-blown. So part of what I've been doing with that student and with some of her instructors, and I know Laura Vance was on here, and Laura Vance has been key in that as well, because she's actually an instructor for this student, but is working with that student to try to find the way that we can keep her engaged as a student when she's having a pretty intrusive chemotherapy, which is going to require that she be gone for a bit. And so to me, that's what my job is about. I go and sometimes will meet with a student that freshman year you really wonder if they're going to make it. And by senior year, they're getting ready to walk across the stage. And so I've seen students at some of their highest points and some of their lowest points. Probably one of the most difficult things that I deal with, but I've loved Eastern's approach to this. Is the unfortunate thing is that we deal with student death at times.
Sure.
And they have allowed me to, on behalf of the university, reach out to families. There was actually a family that was here on campus this past weekend in the President's Box, that the way they became engaged was because of the untimely death of their son. And so even though that's a sad thing, I think that it's so important that we understand that that is who Eastern is. That is who we are to students and to families. And I've been blessed that I get to be the person that gets to do that. So,
in your current role as Dean of Students and as an alumni of EKU, why should students come to EKU? What's the biggest reason you think?
Well,
or reasons?
I have always, number one, I feel like you get a quality education. And I feel like from my perspective, Eastern offers a decent-sized school with a small school feel. So you have professors that call me and go, I'm really worried because this student was really engaged in class. They were on top of their game. They've been missing for 3 classes. I'm worried about that something's going on. That might not occur at every institution. That's the size of us. And so it's that personal feel. I've heard Eastern referred to as a family for many, many years. And of course, if you're a part of a family, you know that families sometimes love each other and sometimes they're mad at each other. And all those things kind of happen. But I believe that Eastern is a place that's committed to students, committed to student success. And I keep saying I'm blessed, but the division that I'm part of, that's what it's all about. It's about getting good students here, keeping good students here, and giving them the very best experience, helping them through their lows, celebrating with them through their highs. So that's why I would recommend it.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And, so many of our students who graduate go on to become, who become our alumni, come back, work here, come back for homecoming, support the university, I think in ways that you don't get in a lot of other places.
Right.
I really do.
And how fun. Like, speaking of homecoming, it's coming up.
Yeah.
So let's all be here for the parade on Friday night. How fun is that going to be? Saturday will be filled with all kinds of things. I oversee the King and Queen contest. So I get to meet all those fine young men and women, and I tell Dan McBride and all those fine folks over in Alumni every year that one of these days I'm going to go walking out on that field in a crown. So if you all see me there this year, you'll go, it came to fruition.
I love it. I love it. And I think you should do it. And what a great lead-in to our Colonel Quickfire segment.
Yay!
Yes. So this is the portion of our program where we ask you a series of questions, okay? And, they're on all different topics. So I got 3. I might have a bonus question, though. And Brady has at least 3.
Yep.
Oh, no.
And, you can answer them one word answer, one sentence. Some people answer them, they'll go 5 minutes on one. It's fine. We call it quick fire, but it doesn't necessarily turn into quick fire, right? So you answer these however you would like. And I'm going to go ahead and start. So where is one place in Kentucky that if somebody was coming here, they absolutely have to visit? And I've never stumped anybody. The whole time we've been doing this, I've never stumped anybody. Or where
in Kentucky, or are you talking about here?
In Kentucky in general.
I think Cumberland Falls. Period.
All right.
And the Moonbow, if you can get there.
The Moonbow, if you can get there. I should have prefaced that. Nobody has been stumped yet on these. So,
oh, yeah. Leave it to me to be the first. That's what I want to do. I'm a trendsetter.
I like it.
Yep. All right, my turn. What is your favorite memory as a student here at EKU?
I think being a part of a sorority, and particularly like the whole really the whole sisterhood thing, and welcoming new members, and I think that's a great part of campus life, and that was really my favorite part when I was here.
That's good.
All right, if you didn't live in Richmond, where would you like to live?
I think,
and I mean anywhere.
See, this is where I'm really, really simple. I'm just so simple. I would like to live somewhere at the beach. But my biggest problem is I don't want to be there when it's like crazy hot. So I'd like to come back to Richmond when it's hot and be here in the humidity. Like, I would love to live on the Gulf Coast in Florida unless there are like hurricanes, and then I don't want to live there. I'd love to live on the Gulf, like there in Alabama. But I could also live in Hawaii. Hawaii is where I was in the ocean when I decided to come to EKU. Yeah. So maybe I should go back there.
Yeah, because I was getting ready to ask you Pacific or Atlantic side, or possibly, like Tahiti or somewhere like that. Fiji, I don't know, Caribbean. Like you could probably handle any of those places.
Yeah,
right?
I could probably deal with it.
Somewhere with sand and water.
Yes.
There you go.
That my kids could come to. That's important.
Yeah. All right, Ma Kelly's or Jackson's?
Oh my gosh! Ma Kelly's when I was a student, Jackson's now. Like, what great places.
Yeah.
They're so similar. Ma Kelly's, you got to love Ma Kelly's because nobody got charged the same thing. Depending on what you were wearing, she'd look at you and go, 50 cents. And then the next person behind her would have the exact same plate, and they might have a nicer or a cleaner shirt on. She'd go, $1.25. So, but, who doesn't love home cooking? And Jackson certainly is that place. Wednesday night, chicken and dumplings. That's every Wednesday night there.
Ooh, that sounds...
And breakfast all
good.
day.
Oh, yeah, their breakfast is good. See, I am disappointed that I was not around when Ma Kelly's was.
Yeah, it was. I'll tell you, not only was Ma Kelly's something for the food, Ma Kelly's was where you were fed when you didn't have money to eat. And, nobody ever would have thought, look at this little shack store-looking place that 1,000 EKU names were on. But she did. She fed people. And if you went in there and had a quarter, you'd eat for a quarter.
So she really was the original pay what you can.
Yep.
Because, we
Yes.
hear about that nowadays with these restaurants and things that have their pay what you can. And so she was an innovator.
She was an innovator with that. And she did that and never thought twice about it.
I like it. So I got a bonus question for you before my last question, technically. So this is going to make 4 for me. But I have to ask you this. What's your favorite homecoming memory since homecoming is
on the way.
coming up?
Oh, my gosh.
And you can't say wearing the crown out on the football field in 2018.
I think that my favorite memory is probably the first year that I came back for homecoming, and that was not the year after I graduated. I couldn't get off work, and so I had been out of school a year. And coming back, like, I was not supposed to come to college. I'm a first-generation student. Neither of my parents had been to college. My dad has a high school diploma that he got via GAED in the Navy when he was in the service. And my mom really wanted me to come to school. My dad didn't. And to be real honest with you, I was sort of ambivalent about whether I wanted it or not. But I came in with a 2-year degree. So I actually have a 2-year degree. I have an associate's in child care. And then I decided that I'd go on and get the 4-year degree. I was like, whew, I made it this far. I'll try 2 more. But I never thought I would do that. And coming back the first time that I was not one of them like the students over here. I was like one of them, like the alumni that made it. I was like, I did this. And so it was probably more of an accomplishment feeling than when I graduated because I'd had some time for it to kind of set in and I was part of the real world at that point in time. So I think that was probably by far my favorite. But gosh, I love homecoming. I work it every year, and I'm going to have one that I don't work. I love the parade. I will say this year I'm doing a little bit different, so I'm making that 5-minute conversation now because I've worked the parade every year for I don't know how long. But my sorority has a 50th year reunion. This is our 50th year for being on campus. So that is Friday night, so I'm not going to work the parade Friday night. I'll be with those women. Watching the parade and then having a dinner to celebrate 50 years on campus.
That'll be a lot of fun.
It'll be fun watching it, though, right?
Oh, my
Yeah,
gosh.
absolutely.
I'll be going, hi, everybody. Hi.
All right, here's my last one. What does it mean to be a colonel?
Oh, I hope we didn't stump you on that one.
I think it is I think to be a colonel to me is to know that you can. As I've aged, and I've aged a lot, I've learned that one of the things I appreciate most is a can-do attitude. And I think to me, to be a colonel, it says to students, to people that are here, to their parents, that you can. Because the people who, against all odds get here and make it, they can. And so it's it's a source of pride. I love it. I've never been ashamed. I've always been proud to say that I'm graduated from EKU. And so I guess it's sort of a combination of to be a colonel is pride, but to be a colonel is knowing that you can.
I think you've hit up on a brand new marketing campaign, Colonels Can.
Colonels can.
Colonels Can. Dean Middleton just
right off the
created the next EKU marketing campaign.
Get Cindy or get Christy Middleton. I always say she's my work sister, so bring in Christy Middleton, Doug Cornett, and we'll get this Colonels Can going.
I like it. I like it. All right, last question. Favorite place on campus?
The Ravine. I love it. Spent many day there sitting thinking about the world. My favorite place now, my favorite place is really the Ravine. But on most days, my favorite place is Case Dining Hall because I love it there. And I love the food, as you can see. I've never gone and had bad stuff. And so I'm like, gosh, this place is great. So that's my new favorite place.
I love it too. And I'm telling you, the choices over there are unbelievable. Some of the international dishes that they offer are unbelievable. And you know what's funny, though, is when I go over there, I tend to eat vegetarian. And I am not necessarily a vegetarian, but their vegetarian options are absolutely delicious. And so there's our Case plug.
Right. Well, and one of my favorite things I've had is shrimp and grits. What college cafeteria serves shrimp and grits?
And it's delicious.
Crazy.
Let me tell you.
I love it.
Absolutely delicious. Well, Dean Middleton, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of EKU Voices.
Great.
It's been a great conversation. Yeah. Absolutely. It's been so much fun. Morgan, Emily, thank you all again. Student producers, could not do this without you. And of course, you can find current and past episodes of EKU Voices on our webpage at alumni.eku.edu/voices. You can follow us on Twitter at EKU Voices and Instagram, EKU_voices. Follow EKU Development and Alumni Relations on all the social media platforms. And of course, subscribe to EKU Voices on iTunes to receive the newest conversations with Eastern Kentucky University's alumni and friends. So until next time, I'm Carrie Lewis.
And I'm Brady McBride.
And go Big E.